Hello everyone. So today we have another two chapters, sorry, of the book of Hypnotism. As you can tell, I left off at chapter 3. I'm going to be reading chapter 3 and 4 for you today. So here, let's just get right into it. I do not have a lot of time, so let's just get right into it, shall we? Molly blasted away through the school woods, her wet, ferny undergrowth slapping her legs. She picked up a stick and thrashed the plants. The first hairy fern she came to was Mass Adderstone. Schwip! The stick zipped through the air and cut off her head. Old cow, Molly muttered. A dark green creeper was Edna. Filthy old bag. She came to the base of large yew tree. Poisonous red berries were rotting on the ground around it, and a huge yellow fungus was growing revoltingly on its trunk. Ah, Miss Toadley! Thwack, thwack! Molly felt a little better once she sliced Miss Toadley into smelly bits. Notorious yourself, she said. Sitting down on a tree stump, Molly kicked at a nettle. Take that, Rocky, she said. The nettle bounced back and stung her ankle. As Molly found a dock leaf and rubbed it on the nettle's sting, she thought that maybe Rocky had been right. A bit. But she still felt cross with him. After all, she never nagged him. Sometimes if he was singing one of his songs, she had to shake him to get his attention. She didn't expect him to change his habits. Molly had thought Rocky liked her exactly as she was, so it was a big shock to discover that he disliked even a part of her. A bigger shock to see him side with the others. She wondered how often he'd been resentful of her without saying anything. He'd been wandering off a lot lately. Had he been avoiding her? Molly's mind burned. What was it he had said? That she never tried anything? But she acted out ads with him brilliantly. She tried at those. Maybe she could find something else to be good at. That would show him. Molly strode on through the woods, feeling very sorry for herself. The trees cleared, and she stood in front of the wind on the bare hillside, looking down at the small town of Barrsville. There was a school, and past it the high street, the town hall, and the houses. Everything glistened from the afternoon rain. Cars that looked the size of guinea pigs beetled through its snaking streets. Molly wished that one of those cars were picking her up, to drive her home to a cozy house. She thought how lucky children who had parents were. However bad their day, they always had a friendly home to return to. Molly diverted her thoughts. Oh, thank you, Mr. YouTube. Okay. Molly diverted her thoughts to the giant billboard that stood on the edge of the town, displaying a different advertisement every month. Today, the message beaming into everyone's lives was "Be cool, drink Cube." The picture on the huge board was of a man on a beach wearing sunglasses drinking a can of Cube. The famous Cube can flashed its gold and orange stripes as if Cube, not the sun, lit up the world. Molly liked the way it was hot looking, and yet had a cool drink inside. Beautiful beach people crowded adoringly around the man who was drinking it. They all had wonderful white teeth, but the whitest teeth of all belonged to the guy with the can of Cube. Molly loved Cube ads. She felt she practically walked on the white sandy beach where this one was set, and knew the glamorous people who played there. She knew they were only actors, and that the scene was fabricated, but she also trusted that this world of theirs existed. One day she'd escape from the misery of Hardwick House to begin a new life, a fun-filled life like the lives of the people in her favorite ads. But it would be real. Miss Molly had tasted Cube only once, when Miss Trinkberry had brought in a few cans of it, but the cans had been shared, and so she'd only had a few mouthfuls. With its minty, fruity taste, it certainly was different. As Molly walked down onto the town, she thought how great it would be to simply drinking one can of Cube would make a person popular. She'd love to be popular, like the glossy people on the poster. How Molly wished she was rich and beautiful too. As it was, she was poor, weird-looking and unpopular, a nobody. Down the hill, Molly walked toward the town library. She was very fond of the old, disorganized library. It was peaceful, and its thick photographic books gave her faraway places to dream about. Both Rocky and Molly loved it there. The librarian was also always too busy reading or sorting books to bother them. In fact, it was the one place where Molly wasn't the butt of a telling off, and she could relax in her secret place. She climbed the granite steps and passed the stone lions at the top, going into the foyer. The sweet smell of the wooden floor polish made her instantly feel 10 times calmer. She rubbed her feet and padded over to the library bulletin board, where the only messages from the outside world. This week, there was somebody trying to sell a waterbed, and someone else trying to find homes for kittens. There were notices about yoga courses, tango lessons, cooking classes, and sponsored walks. The biggest notice of all was for the Bridesville Children's Talent Competition the following weekend. This reminded her of Rocky, since he was entering with one of the songs he'd written. Molly had hoped he'd win, but then remembered that she was still cross with him. She immediately stopped her hoping. Quietly, she opened the door of the library. The librarian was sitting at her desk reading a book. She glanced up at Molly and smiled. "Ah, hello," she said, her kind blue eyes twinkling through her glasses. "When I saw your school jacket through the doors, I thought it was your friend. He's been in here a lot lately, and it's nice to see you again." Molly smiled back. "Thanks," she said. The librarian's friendliness made her feel funny. Molly wasn't used to grown-ups being kind to her. Awkwardly, she turned away from the woman's gaze and started to read the pamphlets that were stacked in front of the newspaper table. So it was a library where Rocky had been secretly sloping off to. Molly wondered again if it was because he was trying to avoid her. Then she decided to quit worrying and walk toward the rows of bookshelves. She passed along the tall aisles of books, A to C to D to F. The shelves were crammed with books, often too deep. Some books, Molly thought, hadn't been looked at for decades. She passed the G to I books, then the J to Ls, M to P, Q to S, T to W, next to Z. Z, Molly's favorite place. The X to Z section was all the way at the far end of the library, where the room narrowed and there was only space for a short shelf. In between the shelf and the wall was a snug place warmed by an underfloor pipe and lit by its own light bulb. The carpet was less worn out, as hardly anyone ever went over there, because there weren't many authors or subjects that started with X, Y, or Z. Occasionally people would come to the aisle for zoology, or books by an author whose name began with Z, but not very often. Molly took off her jacket and lay down, her head by the Y and her feet by Z. The floor was warm, and the distant rhythmical thudding of the building's boiler, along with the librarian's soothing voice on the phone, helped Molly to breathe peacefully. And soon she was lying on the floor, imagining herself floating in space again, and she drifted off. A ruckus woke her up. Someone, a man, with American accent, was in a terrible temper, and his gruff voice was getting louder and louder by the second. "I cannot believe this," the speaker bellowed. "I mean, this is unbelievable. I made a deal with you a few days ago on the phone. I wired you the money for the book. Then I fly over from Chicago to get it. 4,000 miles I've come. And you, meanwhile, go and lose it. I mean, what kind of badly run institution is this?" This was a very strange sensation for Molly. Someone else was getting a telling off. The librarian's wren-like voice piped up nervously. "I'm sorry, Professor Knockman. I really can't think of what happened to it. I saw the book with my own eyes last week. I can only assume it's been taken out by someone, although it's always been in the restricted section, so that shouldn't have. Oh dear, let me have a look at the files." Molly peeped through the shelves to see who was making this fuss. At the main desk, the librarian was frantically flicking through a box file, staring beseechingly at the cards as if begging one of them to explain where the missing book had gone. Molly knew what she felt like. "It's by Logan, you said?" she asked in a worried voice. "Logan," the cross voice corrected her. "And the title begins with H." Molly got onto her knees and peered through a higher shelf to see what this man looked like. There was his middle, a barrel-like stomach and a Hawaiian shirt with palm trees and pineapples on it. Molly moved up a level. The shirt was short-sleeved, and on his hairy arm the man wore an expensive-looking old gold watch. His hands were small and fat, while his fingernails were disgustingly long. He strummed the desk impatiently. Molly moved up one more shelf. His nose was upturned and his face was round with a double chin. His black greasy hair started halfway back across his head and hung down to his shoulders. His beard was a small, sharp, black triangle just under his bottom lip, and his mustache was clipped and oiled. His eyes were evil, and his face was sunburned. In all, he looked like a very ugly sea lion, and Molly thought very unlike how she imagined a professor should look. "So," he asked, "have you found it yet?" Well, no, I'm terribly sorry, Professor Knockman. It seems that it hasn't been lent out." "Oh my goodness. Well, this is really embarrassing." The librarian started to scramble around in her drawer. "Professor Knockman, perhaps for now you ought to take your check back." "I don't want to take my check back," boomed the ugly man. "What sort of lousy librarian are you, losing books?" He stormed over to the G to I aisle. Some idiot probably put it away in the wrong place. The man waddled through the aisles, huffing and sweating. Now he was just on the other side of her bookshelf, so close that Molly could have touched him. He smelled of old hamburger and tobacco. Around his fat neck, on a gold chain, hung a scorpion medallion. The scorpion had a diamond for an eye, which caught the light and winked at Molly. The professor's pudgy taloned finger ran menacingly along the top of the T to W books. "Okay," he suddenly announced. "Okay, he's obviously not here, so what are we gonna do about this? You?" he said, marching back to the librarian's desk, pointing aggressively so that his fingernail almost poked her between the eyes. "You are going to check with your colleagues to find out what happened to my book. As soon as you know, you'll call me." He pulled out a snakeskin wallet from his back pocket, and out of that a business card. "I'm staying at the Briarsville Hotel. You will telephone me and keep me updated, and you will get the book back as a matter of priority. I need this book for a very important scientific research. My museum will be horrified to hear how it has been mislaid. Have I made myself clear?" "Yes, Professor." The professor then picked up a sheepskin coat and, grunting angrily, left the library. The librarian bit her lip and then started adjusting the pins in her bun. Molly sat on the floor in front of her a big Y detonated the beginning of the Y shelves. Why was that ugly man so keen to get that book? It must be a very interesting book. More interesting, Molly supposed, than yachting or yodeling or hypnotism. Hypnotism? Molly looked at the book in front of her. Its cover had been ripped, so the first letter of the title had been removed. In a blinding flash, Molly realized that the missing letter had been an H. Could this be the missing book? Quickly, she pulled a heavy leather-bound book from the shelf, and checking fugitively that no one was watching her, she opened the cover. There, in old-fashioned typewriter type, were the words, "Hypnotism, an Ancient Art Explained, by Dr. H. Logan." Molly didn't need to look any further. She quickly shut the book, wrapped it in her jacket, and left the library too. And that was the beginning of the change in Molly Moon's luck. Chapter 4, guys. This is chapter 4. We're already up to 14 minutes. What the heck? 4. With growing excitement, Molly walked back through the streets of Briarsville and across the fields to the orphanage. It was only tea time, but already the grey November light was fading. Peasants chirped loudly in the woods as they settled to roost, and rabbits darted for cover as Molly walked by. When she arrived at Hardwick House, the windows of the stone building were already aglow from the lights within. Molly could make out behind the thin curtain in a second-floor window the wizened silhouette of Miss Adderstone as she petted her bad-tempered pug dog, Bertilla. Molly smiled to herself and pushed open the iron gates. As she walked across the gravel, the side door of the orphanage opened, and it was Miss Trinkerberry. She threw her plump arms around Molly and hugged her. "Oh, hello, Molly Poppet. You're back. At least I didn't miss you completely. How are you? All right?" "Yeah, just about," said Molly, giving her a hug back. Molly would have loved to tell Miss Trinkerberry about the book, but she decided it was better not to. "How are you?" "Oh, good as ever. Look, I saved you a cake." Miss Trinkerberry reached into a flowery knitting bag and rummaged her out. "Here you go," she said, passing Molly a wax paper package. "It's a chocolate cupcake. Made some last night." The glasses in her spectacles flashed as they caught the light coming from the hall. "But don't let Miss Adderstone but don't let Miss You-Know-What catch you with it." "Oh, thank you," said Molly appreciatively. "Must be going now, dear," she said, pulling up her crotchet old coat tightly around her. "Keep warm, Chuck. See you in a week." With that, Miss Chickabiddy set off for town, and Molly went inside. She quickly walked up to her bedroom, and since everyone else was at tea, had time to eat her cupcake. She hid the book under the mattress. Then she went down to the dining room and sat by herself at a small table by the fireplace. Molly usually had tea with Rocky, but he wasn't here. She ate her bread and margarine, warily watching Hazel at the large table on the other side of the room. She was showing off because she'd won the cross-country race. Her beefy legs were covered in mud, her big face was still red from all the exertion. Molly knew that when Hazel saw her alone, a bullying session would begin. Hazel would make a few vicious comments, and Molly would pretend not to care. Hazel's taunts would become more and more malicious until she pierced Molly's shell. Molly might blush, or her face might twitch, of course. She might get a lump in her throat, and her eyes might water. Quickly, Molly stuffed the last of her bread into her mouth, and prepared to leave, but she was too late. Hazel shouted, "Look, everybody, Zona's finally made it. Did you fall in a puddle, Jonah? Or was there a frog in the path that frightened you? Or did your weird spammy legs snap?" Molly smiled sarcastically, trying to shake the insults off. "Is that supposed to be a cool smile?" asked Hazel, with a sneer. "Look, everybody, Bog Eyes is trying to look cool." Molly hated Hazel, although she hadn't always. Hazel had arrived at the orphanage 4 years ago, aged 8. Her bankrupt parents had been killed in a car crash, leaving her nothing, not even relations. And so, alone and destitute, she'd been sent to Hardwick House. Molly had done her best to make Hazel feel welcome, but very soon she realized that Hazel didn't want her friendship. Hazel had pushed Molly up against the wall and explained to her that she was better than her. She had known a wonderful family life, and she remembered her parents. She hadn't been dropped like rubbish on the doorstep. She'd come here because a tragic twist of fate had killed her loving parents, and ever since then Hazel had teased, taunted, and bullied Molly. "I said, is that supposed to be a cool smile?" repeated Hazel. "Maybe a farmer attacked her because she looks like a bog-eyed rat," suggested skinny Roger Bibbin. He was Hazel's informant, her spy. As Molly looked at him, in his crisp white shirt and with his tidy hair, she thought how much he looked like a shrunken adult. His sharp nose and cold spying eyes were sinister. "Or maybe a rat attacked her because her sweaty hands stink so much," piped up muscly Gordon Boyles. He had tattooed each of his fingers using a compass and ink. The fingers on his left fist read "Gourd," and the fingers on his right read "King," from where she was sitting. From where she was sitting, Molly could read "King Gourd," as Gordon took a bite of his tea cake. Molly was reminded of his trademark trick of taking a fresh slice of bread and blowing his nose in it, making what he called a snot sandwich, which he'd then eat. "Or did Rocky and you sit in the bushes planning your wedding?" gibed Hazel. All at once Molly smiled. It was a smile that came from excitement deep inside her, and from the hopes already kindled in her about what she would be able to do if she learned how to hypnotize people. Hazel and her posse just better watch out. Without a word, Molly stood up and left the room. After tea, all the children had to rest on their beds, except for those who were allowed to practice their acts for the Bridesville Children's Competition. Molly was itching to start reading the hypnotism book, but couldn't risk it, as Cynthia was reading a comic on the bed beside her. The minutes crawled by. Molly heard Rocky's husky voice, but she still felt angry about what he'd said, so she didn't go and see him. Then came homework hour. It felt like homework year. Miss Atherstone's cuckoo clock struck 6. At assembly, Molly ignored Rocky, and so Rocky ignored Molly. After singing a hymn, a tape-recorded organ music, I cannot speak, Miss Atherstone, with Bertilla yapping under her arms, made some announcements. The first was that Molly would be on vacuuming duty for a week, since she had failed to complete the cross-country race. The second was that some American visitors were coming the next day. "They will be arriving at 4 o'clock. May I remind you that they are interested in adopting one of you?" strangely enough. If you remember, the last Americans to come here left empty-handed. Do not let me down this time. I'd like to get rid of one of you at least. They won't be interested in adopting dirty, flea-bitten rat runs. Miss Adderstone's eyes hovered on Molly. So clean up. Only a respectable child will be chosen. Some of you, of course, don't need to be told this. Every child in the room felt excited when they heard this news. Molly even detected a glimmer of hope in Hazel's eyes. At supper, Molly sat by herself, eating a bruised apple. Finally, when she thought she was about to explode from curiosity, she found a moment when the bedroom was empty. Quickly taking the book from under the mattress, she hid it in her laundry bag and set off for the laundry room. Hades means hell in Greek. Hades was the orphanage name for the laundry rooms, which were deep in the bowels of the building. Molly made her way down to them now, looking as if she was off to do some washing. The cellar was dark and musty with low ceilings. The walls were lined with rusty pipes that hung with drying clothes. At the far end were some old porcelain sinks with limestone-covered plug holes where the children washed their dirty clothes. Molly found a warm spot under a light bulb, below some drying pipes, and bursting with anticipation, she reached inside her laundry bag. All her life, Molly had yearned to be special. She fantasized that she was special, and that somehow something miraculous would happen to her. Deep down inside, she felt that one day, a brilliant Molly moon would burst out and show everyone at Hardwick House that she really was a somebody. Yesterday, she thought something important was going to happen. Maybe the important thing was one day late. All evening, Molly had wondered whether this book was going to make her dreams come true. So it was with trepidation that I cannot speak, and a timid hand that she slowly lifted the dry leather cover of the old book. It opened with a creak. There was the first page again. Hypnotism, an ancient art explained. Molly turned to the next page. What she read made her tingle from head to toe. Dear reader, welcome to the wonderful world of hypnotism, and congratulations for making the wise decision to open this book. You are about to depart on an incredible journey. If you put into practice the following nuggets of wisdom, you will find that the world is full of golden opportunities. Bon voyage, bon chance. Sincerely, Dr. H. Logan. Molly noticed with amazement that Dr. Logan had come from Briarsville. This was extraordinary, as sleepy Briarsville didn't have many interesting people to boast of. She eagerly turned the page. Instruction. You have probably often heard enough of the ancient art of hypnotism. Perhaps you have been seen a performing hypnotist in a traveling fair, hypnotizing members of the audience, getting them to behave in peculiar ways, and amusing the spectators. Maybe you have read statements of how people have been hypnotized for operations so that they feel no pain. Hypnotism is a great art form, and like other art forms, hypnotism is something that most people can learn, if they are patient and practice hard. A few students of hypnotism, will have a natural talent. Very fewer will have a real gift. Will you be one of the gifted few? Read on. Molly's hands began to sweat. Hypnotism, the book read. Hypnotism was given by the name by the ancient Greeks. Hypnos means sleep in Greek. Hypnotists have practiced since the earliest of times. Hypnotism is also known as mesmerism, a word that comes from the name of a doctor called Franz Mesmer. He was born in 1734 and died in 1815, and his chief pursuit in life was the art of hypnotism. When a person is under the powers of a hypnotist, he or she is in a trance. People go into trances all the time without realizing it. When you put your pen down, for instance, and 1 minute later you can't remember where you put it, you can't remember because you were in a small trance. Daydreaming is another form of entering a trance. People daydream in a world of their own, and they come out of their daydreams trance. They often don't know what people around them have been saying or doing. In trances, people's thoughts float away from the noisy world to quieter places of the mind. Molly thought of the trick she'd learned, of drifting off into space and looking down at the world, of turning herself off when people are shouting at her. Maybe without knowing it, she had been putting herself into a trance. The book continued. Our minds like to relax in this way, as a rest from thinking. Trances are very normal things. When Molly read the next sentence, her heart skipped a beat. If you are good at going into trances, the chances you will be very good at hypnotism. Hungrily, she read on. What a hypnotist does is bring people into trances, and then keep them there by talking to them in a hypnotic way. When the person is in a deep trance, sort of wide awake sleep, the hypnotist can then suggest things that the person should think or do. For instance, the hypnotist might say, when you wake up you will not want to smoke another pipe, or when you wake up you will no longer feel afraid of riding in automobiles. Molly put the book down for a moment. Or, she thought aloud, when you wake up you will think you are a monkey. Molly smiled as ideas began to jostle through her head, and a shiver of suspicion stopped her in her tracks. Was this book for real, or was it written by a madman? Then she remembered the man in the library. He said he'd traveled all the way from America just to find this book. The professor must believe the secrets contained between its covers were extremely valuable. It must be very special. Perhaps, Molly said to herself, perhaps she'd chanced upon a real treasure. Eagerly she looked at the table of contents. 1. Practice on yourself. Hypnotizing animals, hypnotizing others, pendulum hypnotists, hypnotizing small groups of people, how to hypnotize a crowd. Hypnotizing using voice alone, long distance hypnosis, amazing feats of hypnosis. The book was prepared with drawings of hypnotized people in Edwardian clothes. There was a picture of a woman lying flat with only a chair under her head and one under her feet. She was called the human plank. There were lots of diagrams of a man, making strange faces, one with a puffed-up blowfish face. Another where his eyes were turned upward, showing their whites. Yuck, disgusting, Molly thought. As she turned the thick pages of the heavy old book, Molly came to the end of chapter 6. She realized it was immediately followed by chapter 9. 2 chapters, chapter 7, hypnotizing using the voice alone, and chapter 8, long-distance hypnosis, had been carefully removed. Molly wondered who had taken the pages, and whether they'd gone missing years ago or only recently. It was impossible to tell. Near the end of the book was a brownish photograph. It was a man with curly hair and glasses and a bulbous nose. Dr. Logan, the world's most famous hypnotist, it said underneath. Molly was relieved to see that you obviously didn't need to be a great beauty to be a good hypnotist. Eagerly, she flicked back to the first chapter. Practice on yourself. The first section was voice. It read, a hypnotist's voice must be gentle, calm, luring, like a mother's hand rocking a baby to sleep. So a hypnotist's voice must lull the subject into a trance. This sounded too good to be true. Molly had been labeled with the nickname Drono because people said her voice made them want to go to sleep. Now this ability, instead of being something to be ashamed of, felt like a talent to boast about. The book went on. Here are some exercises which must be said slowly and steadily. Practice them. Molly read the sentences out loud. I have wonderful, calm voice. I am calm and superstasive. My voice is very. All of a sudden she heard loud steps. She shut the book quickly and slipped it under her laundry bag. Hazel was coming into Hades. She stamped noisily into the pipe room with her tap shoes still on. Ugh, she said. What are you doing here, weirdo? I heard you trying to sing. Give up. Your voice is flat. Just singing while I found my socks, said Molly. More like you're down here thinking about how everyone dislikes you. Hazel collected her clothes from a pipe and turned to look at Molly. You're like a sock, aren't you? Aren't you, Jonah? A worn-out, stinking, unwanted, weird sock. Why don't you enter the talent competition as a sock? When Molly didn't react, Hazel added, or better still, enter as the ugliest person in the world. And shuddering, she added, Ugh, I bet your parents were ugly bog eyes. With a satisfied smirk, she turned around and walked away. Molly watched her go. She smiled to herself, and under her breath, she said, "Just you wait, Hazel Hackersley. Just you wait." Alright, that was the 2 chapters. Next is chapter 5 and 6. So, as of right now, we're up to 30 minutes. Okay, fine. Also, I will see you guys in the next one. There probably won't be one video going to be uploaded tomorrow. But I'm hoping to upload maybe on Thursday. I'll be at my grandmother's the whole day tomorrow, so yeah. And also, I just want to mention one other thing. I am going on a cruise, a week-long cruise, in the Bahamas this week. Today is Tuesday. And we're going. Myself, my mom, and my dad are going on the cruise. On Friday this week, Friday. So yeah. So I will see. I have this one here to upload today. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.